Good morning, guys. I hope you all are having a fantastic day. I am going to take you down to my garden today and explain to you how we built the garden in case you guys are wanting to put something in this year, wanting to grow something. Hopefully it'll give you a little bit of inspiration and a little bit of direction on which way you should go and perhaps how you might want to do things. So come with me and I'll show you the garden. So this gives you a little overview of the garden. We have the raised bed area, and then we also have an in-ground garden. So let's go a little closer and we'll talk about the things that Nate and I discussed and planned for when we built this garden. And I will tell you, really, it wasn't a lot of planning. It was just really get it done and get it done quick. So the first thing that we knew that we needed coming from our old property was that we needed somewhat of a level area. And this was pretty level. It had a slight slope on it, but Nate took the box blade and he went ahead and leveled out this area. The second thing that I knew that I wanted, living in South Carolina with red clay, I knew I wanted raised beds. I needed that immediate garden. If you guys saw our other video about why I built this garden, you'll know that I wanted something immediate. I needed to plant stuff and I wanted to plant it now. So raised beds were the way to go here. I did not have time to amend and fix the soil that was already here. So we knew we wanted raised beds, and I knew I wanted to do it as cheaply as possible. So we built our raised beds out of fence pickets. So the majority of our raised beds are 4x8, and you can see here these long boards right here. These are just 8-foot fence pickets, and for the sides we just took an 8-foot and we cut it in half. So in order to attach the fence pickets, we use these pieces of wood. These are called landscape timbers, and you can get those at Lowe's or Home Depot. And this is just half of it. We went ahead and cut these lengthwise and then cut them to a length that was equal to the depth of this, about 16.5 inches. And that is what we screwed the fence pickets into to make the box. These landscape timbers here in the center of the beds, those are cut longer, and those are actually pounded into the ground, and we then attached the fence pickets to those. The reason we pounded these middle ones into the ground was because once you add the soil to the beds, the pressure from the soil just really wants to make these beds really bow out, and so you really need these for the longevity of the bed. And so that's how we built the majority of the beds in here. These are 4x8s. I do have some really long ones right down here where my blackberries are, and I have raspberries on the other side. And then I have a couple of 3x4. Those all have blackberries in them. I have a trellis here, and there's the raspberries, just like the blackberries. Those are 2-foot by 16-foot beds. And then there's another blackberry trellis there. And I do have one at the front of the garden right here. And then I also have these smaller beds. These are 3x6. These are galvanized. I bought these at Northern Tool, and so when we moved to this property, we brought these with us, and they have been great. These are really good for your smaller crops like lettuces, spinach, Swiss chard, beets, radishes, whereas the bigger beds I like to use for things more like tomatoes, some of my perennials, peppers, things with a deeper root system. So one thing you want to consider if you're putting in raised beds or even an in-ground garden are your walkways. We made these walkways a specific size so that a wheelbarrow or a wagon or something would fit through there. If you don't have that access, it makes it much more difficult when you're trying to mulch areas. When we harvest things, we're harvesting so much that we have so much plant waste, like perhaps the tops of carrots, you know, the leaves of a brassica plant, something like that, that we are taking things out of here by the load and either up to the chickens or down to the compost. So I need something in here to help me with those tasks. So making your walkways accessible is going to be a great thing to do, as well as making your gate accessible, because if you can't get it in, then you can't use it in here no matter how wide your walkways are. Another thing to consider is sunlight. We do have some trees in this back area here, But we pretty much get really good sunlight down here. In the fall time, we do not get as much sun. The sun will rise behind these trees here and it'll come up, but this garden is really shaded till 10:30 or 11 o'clock during the day in the fall and winter time, which is kind of a pain. Another thing to think about is water access. We don't have any water down here, so I spend a lot of my time watering in this garden. If you're gonna put in a big garden like this, get some water down there. I would say that is one of the first things that you'll want to do, because I spend so much time down here watering, and luckily Nate is going to put that in for me before the beginning of this season. That's one of the things that he sort of does in his line of work, so I'm very grateful that he knows how to do that, because that's going to save a lot of time. After we built all of the raised beds and had them set in here, the kids and I came back through with landscape fabric, and we laid landscape fabric in all of these pathways. That's just gonna help to keep weeds down, grasses, and it has been fantastic. Originally, we were gonna lay pea gravel in here, which is a small stone, but because of costs, we just went with free wood chips that we can get from either Chip Drop or arborists in the area that are doing some tree work. I would say that this was probably the most inexpensive way that we could have built a garden of this size. And so I'm really, really happy with it and happy with the results. So after the raised bed garden was put in, I decided I needed more space. You all know, if you saw that other video, that this garden was put in because I felt like I needed to grow food for my family. I felt like the grocery stores weren't gonna have anything. And so I looked at this and I thought, this is a great amount of space, but I need more. So I told Nate I wanted to put in an additional garden, and that's what this is. This is 70 by 55. My planting areas are 30-inch by 70, and my walkways are 24 inches. The 30 inches is what you'll see in a typical market garden, and I knew I wanted high production, and so that is what I went by. Sometimes you can get by with 18-inch pathways. I wanted a little bit bigger in my walkways just for wheelbarrows, wagons, you know, people getting in there to work and harvest makes it a little bit more accessible. I had never grown in ground before. We have very hard red clay here, and the only way that I knew to do this was to basically just build up soil on top of the existing area. One challenge that we faced was the pasture. The grasses are so thick and so hard to kill. So the first thing that we did is we brought out our little John Deere mower and we mowed it down really, really tight. The next thing that we did was take a disc harrow on the back of our tractor and just sort of tried to break up that top layer. We still had a lot of grass that was continuing to grow in there. So I laid down blue tarps. You can buy silage tarps, which are made for this, but I'm cheap and I didn't want to buy those. So I just bought big blue tarps, and we laid those down. And I thought, that's gonna kill the grass. We left them down for a few weeks in the hot weather. We pulled it up, and no, the grass was not killed. So my next thought was cardboard. We need cardboard. So I went to everywhere local in town. I went to the newspaper offices. I went to furniture stores. I even tried to buy a big compressed thing of cardboard from Tractor Supply. We went everywhere. I didn't end up having to buy any, which was fantastic. So if you want to do this method, don't buy it. Find furniture stores, you can ask them, and you'll be surprised at how much cardboard you can actually get for free. So we laid down cardboard everywhere, and then we came in with the tractor and just laid a row of compost, and then we would go get wood chips. We'd lay a row of wood chips, another row of compost, another row of wood chips, until we had finished in this garden. And so right now it looks a little rough. We have finished mulching it for this season, but I do need to put some compost on top of the beds, as well as get rid of a lot of this onion grass that's growing up here. A couple of other things you might want to think about are trellises. Are you growing peas? Are you growing pole beans? Are you growing cucumbers? Those types of things do best when on a trellis, and the reason for that is because that's how they naturally grow, and it keeps them free from, well, not free, but it reduces your chances of fungus or mildew, which can really wipe out your harvest. So trellises are important. That is one thing that I'm gonna have to do this year. I have taken up all of my trellis area with raspberries and blackberries, and I have nothing left. You may be wondering about these big long posts on these beds. These are the beds that I grew my tomatoes in last year, and I did a method called the Florida weave to help to sort of stake those up. And there's lots of videos on that particular method. I did find that these did not work so great. The wood sort of wanted to pull in with the pressure of the baling twine that I used to keep my tomatoes upright. And so this year I'll be doing those in the in-ground garden, and I'll be using T-posts in the in-ground garden. And the last thing to consider when you're growing a garden is a fence. If you have any type of animal pressure, we have a lot of deer here. And I knew that the deer who like to hang out right back down there, I knew that they were gonna eat my stuff. So we had to have a fence. This fence is very temporary. We threw it up last year so that we could get going on the garden season. We have 8-foot T-posts, and then we just have welded wire fencing that we had from the other property. And I wouldn't recommend this. It does break quite easily, but if you're looking for something cheap and quick, this would be a good option for you. We simply attached the fence to the T-posts with zip ties. So yes, we definitely made this work in a pinch, and it has been great. We do have some insulators up at the top here, these little yellow pieces. Those are little plastic insulators, and I have a line of wire that I electrify in the summertime to keep the deer out. So that effectively gives me about a 6-foot tall fence. They do say deer can jump an 8-foot fence, but 6 feet was all I could do because these T-posts go down into the ground about 2 feet, and that's worked really great for us. So although this is temporary and it is rigged up sort of, it works just fine. I hope you guys found all this information helpful. I hope it will help you guys to inspire you to see that you can have a garden too. It doesn't have to be massive like this. You don't have to be a chronic overreactor like me. You can just put in a couple of garden beds. Make it simple, make it low cost. A little bit of wood and a little bit of soil does not cost as much as this much wood and this much soil. So just grow something, learn something. Each season you'll get better and better, and it feels so good to be able to say, hey, go down and grab some lettuce from the garden. Go down and grab a tomato from the garden. It feels so good to harvest that food and bring it up and feed your family. So thank you guys so much for taking some time out of your day today to spend with me. And if you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments below.